This is deep dive. It's probably more of a deepish dive going through because we can't go in, and I've already been told off for the pun use in that title going through, so who knows. Anyway, so we'll lead it off pretty much going through. We'll start just an overview of what we do, where we go through. Grant's going to cover off around asset management. Laura's here as well for any questions that come in. Feel free to interrupt with any questions you got going through. We do only have an hour and we could end up in all sorts of tangents and rabbit holes and stuff, so just be aware on that. So if we go through, just a quick, and it's probably everyone knows, we've got the water supply, wastewater and stormwater. Urban for Timaru, Temuka, Pleasant Point, Geraldine, Peel Forest, etc. Rural for our trickle top-ups schemes that go through. We treat all the water supply potable standards except for our stock water schemes at Beautiful Valley and Rangitata Arari. On the wastewater side, reticulations for Timaru and the inland towns. According to the definitions, we have one wastewater network because the inland towns all come through to Aorangi Road for discharge out. We've got the industrial trade waste as well. On the stormwater side, we look after stormwater, but that's in conjunction with our LTU unit as well, and that's the treatment of sediments, etc. through, and then that discharge of it going on that front. On the water supply side, there's 48,000 people that we serve. That's approximately the 21,000 discussed before around what those schemes are made up of on that front. And just, yeah, there's some general stats here to get into. Also at the end of the presentation that we can hand out, it's got a lot more stats that back into this. And apologies for the map. It was a bit of a grab through, but that's the area that we're covering with our reticulation network. What you'll notice in there on the downland scheme is we're also providing services to Mackenzie and Waimate. Wastewater, the Aorangi Road site where we've got screening, oxidation ponds, wetland, then the ocean outfall. The inland towns have that initial treatment site where we've got screening and oxidation ponds. They then come down to Aorangi Road for the discharge through. On the industrial, large 14 customers have their own separate pipeline that comes in as well, and that's combined for the discharge. And again, a nice map to show you exactly where they're out and spread through the region. Stormwater is the drainage and water with LTU to go through. We've got a large network on that where it's expanding around what we need to do with the global consent applications that are underway. So we submitted those between 2019 and 2023. We got a decision on yesterday for Geraldine. So they've accepted the application. We're just going through because there's some slight variations to what we applied for versus what they gave. So we need to make the decision how we take that forward. On that front, there's also some other consents for existing sites which they will get dragged up into the global consent. Yep. And these are the areas we've got storm management areas. So apologies. Geraldine, down into Winchester, Temuka, Pleasant Point, Timaru and Washdyke is what's covered in our areas and will be covered by the global consent. And I'll let Grant talk to the asset management side.
Thank you, Andrew. So I'm just going to start with a couple of quotes from the International Infrastructure Management Manual. And in particular regarding the concern about the financial sustainability of the sewer, water and stormwater networks, and in particular in relation to the short-term decisions about investment, the maintenance and renewals that are not sustainable over the long term, and also the comment on the perfect storm and in particular in terms of reducing funding base, low affordability and ageing infrastructure. I just thought I'd talk very briefly on 4 or 5 key components to asset management, sort of Asset Management 101. And first up, levels of service. So the levels of service within the 3 waters really are driven by legislative and other mandatory requirements. There are customer expectations and affordability, but some examples of that are, for example, providing safe drinking water. So the drinking water standards for New Zealand, they're mandatory, they need to be met. We have other levels of service like, for example, excellent network services. So that's related to water losses, resource consent compliance, things like that. There's customer services, in particular things like attendance and resolution in response times. And then other things like dry weather, sewer overflows or habitable floors that may be inundated in rain events. So they're the sorts of levels of service that we have. The next point in terms of how demand for these services changes over time, and in particular in terms of the planning for the best way to meet that demand, which is generally a combination of operational demand management and asset investment strategies. Moving pretty quickly through those, there's then what are the current state of the assets and are they capable of meeting those demands now and in the future? And really we're talking about asset knowledge. So that's understanding the assets and their value. Asset data is key. So that's the size, type, age, expected life, condition of those assets. And then asset performance and condition. Condition is a measure of the physical state, performance a measure of how the asset is delivering that level of service. So what I really wanted to talk about in terms of asset management is the life cycle planning. And there's 5 key points there in terms of life cycle planning, and there's one in particular I want to talk about, but I'll go through them. So decision-making methods, there's a number of decision-making approaches. So there's things like net present value, which is just a basic life cycle cost. There's multi-criteria analysis is another approach, which looks at positive and negative impacts on non-monetary terms. Criteria are scored, weighted, sort of comes up with an answer. So that's the MCA. Managing risk, so the circular management of risk in terms of identifying the risk in the critical assets, assessing those risks, identifying and evaluating the options for the treatment of those risks, monitoring and reviewing, and sort of back into the circle. Operational planning, we're talking about O&M. So you've got proactive and reactive maintenance costs. The more proactive maintenance you do, the less reactive that you have to spend. But there's a sweet spot in there. You don't want to overdo the proactive because then you don't get the benefit really. So there's the total maintenance cost. There's an optimal zone that you really want to work in. O&M though, you've also got to allow for emergencies. What I wanted to really touch on is capital investment planning. So that's renewals and upgrades, developing a program. And there's really sort of 4 real main ways of doing that. And the first is the projection of historic expenditure. So that looks at what you've been spending over the years, how things are going, and you project that forward. We like to think that we are reasonably sophisticated in terms of our planning, but in actual fact, that's really what we do. That's really what has happened over the years, is you look at what you've been spending, you look at how things are going, and that's projected on. And that's really how the capital investment has been based. There's end of useful life. So you look at the life of the asset, and that then provides you with this is when it's going to end, therefore you need to renew it before that time. What we end up with there is a massive amount that's due, in fact overdue. So that's sort of that approach. Then you get to the predictive modelling, which uses judgment, it uses mathematical techniques in terms of predicting, trying to predict better than an end of life, than an age base, in terms of when the asset is going to fail and when you need to renew it by. The most sophisticated of the ways. The fourth way really is a bottom-up, which is observation of defects. Runs to fail, it fails, you fix it, replace it, whatever. If you stay on the first one, you'll end up in the last one. Financial management, the Three Waters assets, high depreciation, difficult to predict the long-term life, and subject to financial shocks. So I thought I'd just introduce a tool that we have been are using. It's under development. It's called PIPER, Pipeline Priority and Renewals Tool. So a nice little acronym, PIPER. It is under development. So the numbers that we're getting out of this tool are not final, I suppose, is what we'll call it. But it's a prioritisation of reticulation renewals based on criticality and condition. So it's that step up above using the history of development. So it takes data, confidence and condition grade for pipes. We're only talking about pipes, not plant. It looks at the pipe material size and the confidence that you have of that information. It looks at the useful life, the age-based condition of the pipe. AC pipe, asbestos cement pipe, there's been a lot of work done on that in terms of modelling and sampling in order to get a better understanding of the condition of that pipe. And then we also do CCTV and pipe sampling. We look at the maintenance history of the pipes, and it also uses a criticality grade. So it looks at the pipe and tries to determine which is more critical than another, which is not that easy, but it looks at diameter, it looks at cost, and it looks at its location in terms of its whether or not it's near state highways or hospitals or whatever. So, Stuart.
How do you develop the system?
It's a tool that we are using, which has been developed through WSP consultants.
So it's a relatively new tool that's been used quite widely now through the country industry. Yeah, it's it was about 30 grand.
Sorry.
No, that was for the setup. Ongoing, I think it's about 5,000 per annum. Yep. It's looking very promising to go through, especially around prioritising where we actually put that effort into going through.
You guys have just quite something grand. But what would happen if we stop spending for each year? I mean, I'm just interested because I'm...
Wellington Water.
Wellington Water is the answer there. Wellington Water.
Yeah, but I mean, that gets It's thrown at us all the time.
Yeah.
That's what
I think we might get into that as
Well,
we go through.
I think you will, yeah.
If you look at the initial outputs that we've got from this tool, which we'll get to going through.
I'd love you to test it though. I'd love you to leave one street and test the tool. Yeah. Yeah, I know, but I mean, I get this and I get that it's great and we're in renewals, but my rates just went up 24%. I want to make sure where we spend money, because we get this and I get it and it's great, but it still doesn't give me confidence it's totally essential now. Maybe a new tool will. Do you get it though?
Yeah, well, so if we just move a little bit further through here, because that I think will be particularly relevant questions that we can then look to answer. It's all good. So this, so just quickly, in terms of the pipe data confidence, so this is looking at the mains only, and it's a bit hard to tell, but what you can see there, grade 1 is the highest confidence, and what we've got there is within the water supply, 95.5% is in that grade 1, there's 97% in wastewater and 85% in stormwater. So that's giving some confidence in terms of the pipe data that we've got. We've always thought we've got good data in terms of our reticulation, and this is sort of proving some of that. There's 61,000 assets, so that isn't, so some of that is, it's a length of pipe which might be a kilometre. There might actually be 10 different or half a dozen different pipe assets within that length. So it isn't, so in actual fact, in water supply, there's nearly 2,000 kilometres of pipe. There's 440 kilometres in wastewater and 200 in stormwater. So that's provides some confidence in terms of the pipe data that we have.
Sorry, I may have just missed on the last graph. What was the pre and the post bars?
That's when, as we were going through and getting the model built, it was the data cleansing that was going on and where we were fixing up. And so the initial look at the data, we thought around this is the tidying up, because you're constantly tidying up stuff from the 40s, 50s. Yeah, sort of cleansing of the data. So some of the information include laterals and things like that, whereas this is just the mains. So this then just looks at the age-based condition. So this is saying when it was installed, and therefore the condition based on its age. And so grade 5 is the worst. And grade 4 the second worst. So you can see there he takes 300 kilometres of grade 5 of water reticulation main, 90 kilometres of wastewater and 12 kilometres of stormwater. Obviously, in terms of the length, as I said, water supply, there's 2,000 kilometres of main versus 440 of wastewater. So that's just giving you that there. Sorry, that previous one is only using the data confidence 1 information. So if it was confidence of 2 to 5, then it wasn't included within this. So it was only using the stuff that had the very best confidence in terms of.
So how old is grade 5?
Depends on the
pipe material and its
right.
condition.
So asbestos might different grade for different material.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
we then looked at the criticality, which, as I said, was really based on diameter. So the bigger the diameter, the more critical it is, cost and location. That went through a multi-criteria analysis, which then determined the critical assets. 5 is the most critical. And so you can see there's about 100 kilometres of critical 5 in the water supply.
So PW's potable water.
SW stormwater, WW wastewater. That then provides a priority. So there's the combination of all of that information to then give a priority in terms of renewal. This is back to front. So the green is the highest priority.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, yeah, keep that thought. So the green is the very high priority. The blue is the high priority. So, so that's one priority. One is the very high priority. No, I wouldn't say that exactly, because well, it doesn't say how many years, but I'll come to that because if you take the those first two, the very high priority and the high priority, so that is the green and blue. So in the water supply, that is 412 kilometres, and it has a value, replacement value, of $160 million. The stormwater is 55 kilometres and has a value of 143 million. The wastewater is 114 kilometres with 111 million, totalling $418 million worth of pipe only that has a high or very high priority for renewal.
Roughly, how much do we fund that 418 million per annum?
Well, it varies year on year, but about, oh crikey, it's probably about 7 or
At present,
8.
it's about 5 to 6 million
5 to 6?
across all three.
Yeah,
So we've got 100 years before we get rid of the priorities.
correct.
To counter that, in the last few years, we've got $100 million worth of, water debt, roughly over the last X amount of years, and that's all been on microfiltration and major plants and major upgrades, etc. So this is, you're talking about still mains, eh?
This is pipes only.
Pipes. Yeah,
This is
totally.
Pipes only.
So you can you'd had a focus for X amount of years, and you can redirect your focus to main replacement. So.
Yeah, but that's right. I mean, it is the priority. That's right. But that doesn't include the the medium or any the others, which in time will become high priority. So you're only talking about the very high and high priority. In time, the low priority will become a high priority.
Totally get that, but on your sums, just for clarity, 418, we're only putting in 5 million a year. So to get rid of those two that you're telling us will take 80 years.
Yeah. At the current
Current
funding.
investment, yeah.
Current investment, yes.
What's the total value of the asset currently? 600, is it up to 600?
It's around about...
700 million.
No, well, in terms of it's difficult. I think it's about $1 billion.
Yeah.
Last I saw when having a play around with this first edition of Piper, it's about 1.2 billion for
But
all
three.
reticulation, so that doesn't include plant either.
Yeah.
I just need to ask a question. The system is new.
Yep.
It's under development.
Well, it's under development for us, so we're still going through that.
So how rigorously tested has it been? Because
No, not yet.
you just need some variable need to be incorrect.
So the data around condition assessments and that whole, where it comes into around the more than just the age base, but all the other stuff through, that's a very large data set across the entire country and some Australian data coming into it as well. So that information is very
robust.
Robust. The valuations around replacements, again, the valuations that we have are very robust as well. It's with the deep level of detail we have around componentisation.
Yeah, but what is the unknown factor is when exactly a pipe will fail. And, you know, it's a bit like a human. We have an average life of about, age 75. When you get to 74, it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to die the next year. So, yeah, pipes are much the same. You know, when you get to that, at the end of the useful life, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to fail. But this model does predict that. Yeah.
But we're
This
building up-
isn't the, I mean, part of this is, it's predictive. So pipes don't normally just suddenly fail in total. They fail in parts, like the Wellington whack-a-mole thing, where it'll blow up there and you fix it and then it'll go there. And you end up spending more in terms of operational doing the fixes because you haven't replaced the main.
So we've built up the history as well around how often we're going out to fix these pipes, and we'll get them further around what we call maintenance generated renewals. So that's been creeping up.
Sort of drive a system where you've identified some pipes that are in a critical moment, then therefore you start implementing a monitoring process that you will take core samples and know actually what you've got on the ground.
So there's a module inside Piper that allows for prioritising that as well, so CTV, pipe sampling and that, so we can feed that in as well. So it all goes, it takes in a heap of information, so that's all coming through into it. So again, it's under the development. It would have been great if we'd had it about a year or so ago and we'd had all that information to go through, but again, best time to plant a tree, second best time. So it's getting that information in there to go through. But it's really critical to take into account this tool's been used nationally going through, so it's got a lot of information behind it.
So that, there's, like I said, in terms of asbestos cement pipe, we've done a lot of sampling. There's been a lot of sampling done over the country and a lot of modelling associated with asbestos cement pipe. There's useful life, there's standards that are used throughout the country. We're not just making it up here. This is industry standards that are used in terms of the life of pipe. And similarly, there's maintenance history and there is evidential stuff that you do, whether or not that's your own CCTV or your own sampling.
Look, I don't doubt how rigorous it's been, but we put your rates up 15%. If we put them up 10% next year, it'll cut the 80 years to 40 years. So, I mean, my question is how are you going to solve this? You've told us all this info. We don't have a great bucket of money. What's the next step?
I'd actually disagree with the money. So if you look over the next 10 years, you know, through the water charges will inflate to X, and so your 6 million per year will be at least 10 million by the end of it. You're actually not far off. Our water rates are low compared to, Nigel, we did the analysis, you did some analysis versus some other places in the country. So actually you can easily do the income revenue stream. I'd like to see some innovative solutions on, you know, moving some of that pipe renewal in-house, what are those sort of things. So actually you quite quickly get to a point of your 6 million per year, but you might need to drive it up to 18 to 20 million, and it's not actually that out of the radar. There again, I mean, no one's come to save anyone in this space, so you've got to drive it yourself, but I think we've got the tools to do it. But the data's key. I mean, if we've got the right data, that's great.
Jump through to any
I
of
think
those.
the government has clearly, signalled this, and that's why they're seriously looking at increasing the debt cap for waters, because they acknowledge that, you know, you're going to have to borrow money. That's where you're going to get it from. You can't just cash fund all this.
Just jump straight to CapEx.
This data will be key, which will drive some of those decisions around, you know, economic regulation and pricing to pay for this work. So that's in the thinking from central government policy legislation anyway.
So this one's just...
Sorry, sharing of this data. Who owns this? This is our data.
Yes.
So WSP can't use our data.
No. Well, no. So there is some in terms of, you know, that national database in relation to sampling and condition, but that's associated with that sort of useful life modelling.
Yep.
That's it.
We haven't got an endless bucket of money, and I guess for me, I think it comes down to identifying the priorities, because you're going to have a budget, and how you proportion that budget and where will be up to good information and recognising potential risks, and then ratifying them by sampling and ensuring that, yes, this is buggered, we need to do something about it, and not before we have to do something about it. So, because, you know, we've got a certain amount of money due the depreciation, and that's what the budget is. So it's going to be, you guys are going to have to work within that constraint, literally.
I think...
Another question from me, sorry,
Just to quickly comment is that, we're getting double hit here.
So Andrew was talking at the same time, sorry. Okay, yeah.
So is the system...
Unseen voice.
So that's the system.
So the system, is it sophisticated enough to say that pipe is your number one priority? Like, you've got the different categories, and there'll be stretches of pipes inside the number one, you know, the graph, which will be made up of several pipes, is sophisticated enough to say, there's your number one. That's the one you must replace.
No. In terms of the criticality, you know, so, in terms of the priority, so basically it uses all of those criteria to then, through, you know, in effect a matrix, come up with your grades in terms of your very high critical, very high priority, high priority. So it will tell you all of the assets that fit within that category of the very high priority. But it's very difficult to determine the priority of that one over that one there. I mean, I've got a classic example at the moment in terms of you've got State Highway Evans Street, Waka Kotahi are banging on our door about replacing a pipe because they're saying it's leaking and it's destroying the road, etc., and it's like, and we've got another piece of pipe which is in a tunnel which is collapsing, which is a single pipe feeding Timaru. Which is more critical? Both of them.
So basically it gives us several number ones, and then it'll be up to us to prioritise those number ones. But we'll be able to use this piper tool to support our business cases if we're having to ask for a little bit more from the bucket.
It does have the ability where you can put, for want of a better word, a bucket in, and it gives you a program of work to go through. But if the bucket's not big enough to get all the priority ones over that time, that's where it starts to struggle to go through. But it is good around optimising how you would do and package up work. So that's the other big key for it.
So that's the opportunity though, isn't it? So you identify and you know what your priority ones are over X amount of period of years, and so then you go to market and say, well actually we want X amount of kilometres delivered over whatever that period is, 5, 10 years, what have you, and you go to the market and they know that they're going to have that work for the next 10 years because you've already identified, or you come up with a in-house way to deliver some of that pipe length, whatever it is. But actually there's opportunities in this, isn't there?
So there's a definitely strong part of it where it can actually package up that work around and go, you've got this here, this is going to be an optimal delivery of those renewals.
Can I just ask about, and I know we push this out in the long-term plan, but I'm having second thoughts about that, is water meters. So if we had water meters, which we've been told, you know, helps identify leaks and issues like that, have you, you know, obviously you'd feed that into this model, and how much of an effect would that have? I guess what I'm trying to get to is, how much of a priority do you think water meters are? And should we be making them a higher priority because it'll help with this model, or do you think not?
To me, water meters are a high priority because if you don't measure it, it's hard to manage it, to go through. The one where water meters will really come into is, especially around economic regulation, is the leakage. So at the moment, we're basing it on surveys and estimates and models and that. We don't have that customer side consumption to actually do the calculation correctly going through. So, and we're hovering around where sort of the midpoint, but it's not industry good. We're really middle of the road when it comes to leakage. And it is climbing.
We did put that money back in though, in which years?
We only put $6 million in.
No, but we put enough in for the
next year.
We put enough in for the early years, and based on a year to do the work, then to roll it out over the time.
Wasn't quite enough to get it all going through.
It wasn't enough to do the whole lot, but remember we talked about meters have a 10-year life, so you're actually better off approaching it with a rolling replacement rather than having. It's the same with infrastructure spend at the moment. We want to get away from every 10 years we've got to replace every meter.
Across the entire LTP, there wasn't enough to do everything.
No, but we're dealing with the first 3 years, and then there's another opportunity to get some more budget. So, and the other thing too is, you know, we're not delivering our capital budget for the first year. So there is the opportunity for you guys to request, you know, money to be brought forward or what have you, but that needs to come through a formal paper. But governance's view, I think, is that we should get on and deliver water metering. Well, it's been sitting around for ages, and yeah.
So we've seen some graphs recently. I can't remember what meeting it was at. So metering significantly reduces the usage, whether it's leakage or usage. So
yes,
our
leakage is what, 280?
It's about, across the board, it's about 25%. So urban's just on 20, rural's pushing towards 30. And it's an awkward, we could go down a whole rabbit hole because I spent way too long doing reporting on leakage in a previous life, and the measures are probably the worst way that nationally we could have gone with, but it's what they've gone with. So it definitely punishes us for rural schemes, which should have been a measurement per kilometre. So we're quite good on that, but because they went with the percentage, it's not helpful. So the big one, metering, and having seen it, you get the initial shock, and it's only the shock if you're volumetrically charging. After that, water demand is very inelastic. So put the price up. I think they put up 17%, Auckland, no change in water use. So once that discretionary has been cut out, you just, until you do another price shock, which happened up there when they volumetrically charged for wastewater. And that then had another, not the same extent. So that was a big change in that side. But for the saving on the cost in that, it really saves if you've got that high growth where you're having to bring on new water sources on that side. That's where the big saving is on the capital side.
Still an opportunity to, whether you've got enough money in there or not, to target older suburbs with older housing and older pipework, surely. So in a year's time, can we be confident that we're starting to deliver water metering? Water meters, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was my point though. We're already, kicking around. We don't have the full 100 million of capex. We're not going to deliver it in the first year. So, and it was always around balancing your debt limit of 2.5 and staying under that. So I would imagine between infrastructure and finances, you can come up with what money is needed and what can be brought forward to start delivering some of those things. We've had one project that's delayed, so straight away you've got the opportunity. Nigel's not as confident.
Other than full-blown water metering, can you a series of meters and at certain junctions that will allow you to identify where our leaks are?
You can do what they call district metering, but that's also another big investment because we have to start zoning up areas and going through. So we've got to actually build suburbs into zones and have them discrete and separated out.
I think ultimately you want to actually charge your consumers for the water they use. It becomes a user-pays system. It's no different to the power. And I think if you compare water costs at the moment to power charges, there's just poles apart. And I think that's where the future of water is charging has got to go to.
And
Sorry, Andrew, but didn't we talk, and this is going back, there was some new digital or different way of metering that was coming in the next couple of years. So if we delayed, it would have made sense to introduce the new meters.
So the smart meters.
Smart meters.
So they are on the market now. If we tried to get into it 4 or 5 years ago when they first came in, we would have struggled to actually source any. The UK's been in a massive rollout of them in the last couple of years and pretty much brought up the global stock. In previous life, they didn't get their order in time for 70,000 smart meters for the annual rollout, so they couldn't put any out for a year because there was just nothing available.
We make a smart meter factory.
But having said that, Mackenzie have just recently installed smart meters up in Twizel, so yeah, and they're reaping the benefits of that.
How long's the delay if you order them now?
It'll be about a year to set up and get contracts in place, and it depends on what delivery mechanism you want. Mackenzie ones pay, they've just contracted out their whole service to go through. Whether we want to part some of that in-house, have the data ourselves in-house, how that, if you're charging on it, how that goes through as well.
What's the point of this workshop? What are you trying to tell us?
What I'd like to tell you is in effect that and the next one, which is that based on the information that we have, there is significant investment necessary in terms of reticulation and plant that is currently unfunded.
Where we work out what we can do about that and how we can actually start monitoring, put a program in place to actually monitor those at risk so we can actually get some real data and information back to make those informed decisions.
Yeah,
I think that's the whole point of these water reforms, apart from the quality. So effectively, the whole point is to put focus on water. So you have governors, that's what their job is, constantly investigating, looking and getting the investments in the right place and also understanding the risk profile. That's the whole point of it. And over time, getting equilibrium in terms of the charges across the country. So, these guys are doing the work. There's also this other piece of work that's going on in terms of how you organise the governance of it.
Yeah, just the other one that, councillors have been faced with is that the standards just keep on increasing. And really that's where a lot of the money has gone, is spending it on lifting standards, improving treatment, all of that sort of thing, and it's been at the expense of renewals, to be honest. And that's where it is, and it's the government's pushed us into it, all because of a few people getting sick, but I relate that to roads, and we kill 400 people a year on the roads. Yeah, no one worries.
I get that, Grant, but Andrew will go out, change his suit jacket, come back in and tell us the whole same story about roads being underfunded. And we've only got so much. It's no disrespect, but that's exactly right, isn't it, Andrew? Susie told us how many Ks in our renewal program. So the CE's right, that's why the focus is on water. But there's no way to magic up the money, particularly.
There isn't, and so therefore you need to be aware that you then get that where the operations increases because of the condition and the performance of the asset.
And if we look at the maintenance generator renewals, where we've had to go in after they've broken into capital expenditure, they've been trending up and they're constantly going up.
I guess that's the key message of this workshop, is that we are in this situation. Forget about how we got here, but this is where we're at, and those costs are going to continue to rise. Because you're right, there's not money there. You can't go and find $100 million.
You may be still getting to those graphs that you just teased us with before, with the 30-year kind of strategy.
Yep.
What would be really cool is to see our current long-term plan
So that's,
line on that, or is that what that is?
That's what that is.
So has
So if
none
you
of that new information fed into this?
Not yet, no. So we're not
Okay.
there.
No.
So that's
Okay, so this is our current infrastructure strategy spend.
Yeah, so the blue one is
purely
based on age out of Infor. So it isn't the Piper thing, it's the Infor, the current...
And that's what's in our current long-term infrastructure plan?
No, what's in our long-term plan is that orange line.
to smooth it out.
So really cool to see the Piper line on here too.
So that orange is
Doesn't
our...
really produce a line like that.
I'll get it remodelled as soon as we're able to use Piper, because the modelling that I used to create the blue line, that was basically my starting point for the budgets that eventually got put forward for the infrastructure strategy and the long-term plan. And I was constrained by it being mostly age-based with valuations attached to each asset, and so it does look quite frightening, but I would like to rerun the models as soon as I can once Piper's a bit more consolidated with our operation.
So Laura, that blue line you're saying is not that's the budget for the age, not the age.
That's the age.
So that's the that's the value, the replacement value of the assets that are due to be replaced in that year.
Right, because when I looked at,
And that spike at year 2, so how Infor works is, so once a asset reaches its replacement age, it then automatically kind of goes into a rolling 3-year cycle, and so
and what's,
that spike is full of stuff that already came overdue, sometimes up to 20 years ago.
so sorry to ask you so many questions. So what's your definition of a replacement age?
That was at the time of capitalisation about the expected life.
Because like,
Depends on the size and the type of pipe.
because likes of Geraldine, the reservoir, according to its age, it's got another 13 years to go. But we're going to do it in the next year or two. So it's in the red line, but it won't be in the blue line for another 13 years.
For the reservoir or the pipe?
Retake.
Reservoir.
So the
that one,
reservoir
yeah.
sits under plant.
So
Okay.
the plant, so it'll be in there.
Relation.
So
It's just pipe.
So orange is what's in our LTP? I can't see the numbers. Is that the infrastructure strategy number?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Infrastructure
But
strategy.
so orange is LTP. So your blue spike is the issue.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So question, why did we not see this a couple of months ago for that long-term plan?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. I certainly submitted it.
So I'm still struggling with the Piper thing. So I get it gives you priorities, but how do we translate those priorities into something like this? Because, if you had a brand new scheme, I'm assuming Piper still will give you 1, 2, 3 priorities, but they might not be
No,
for
it's-
50 years out, or...
No, if it was a brand new scheme, the day after the brand new scheme, everything would be green.
No, sorry, what I meant was if all your assets were brand new, I'm assuming Piper would still give you priorities. So somebody's number one priority might be 15 years down the track, but our number one might be 1 year.
No.
In
So
Piper, there's kind of a scoring system for each factor, and the stuff that we've shown you that's kind of in the red number one priority to replace, that has kind of a total score of 25 or higher. So that's like, okay, very, very poor condition, plus it's either at end of life or past end of life, and it's got a criticality ranking of A, which means it's a priority in an emergency
So
event.
it may be critical, but its condition is 1, and therefore it is a low priority.
Yeah.
So Piper would not show any renewals if it was a brand new scheme.
Yeah.
No priorities if it was a brand new scheme.
So a brand
sorry.
new pipe could still potentially have a score of, say, 10, but if it's a criticality A, so like the Periora pipeline, that's been replaced very recently, but because it's criticality A, it can still give it a higher score that might put it in kind of the mid-range already. So that's where we kind of focus on the 4 and 5 kind of rated stuff, because we know that that's got red marks across every factor.
So on this one,
Sorry, I've got to get this out. We've just been through a long-term plan 3 months ago. No one mentioned any of this. I want to get to the bottom, because this is like a hard sell 3 months after we've made a decision. Why was this info not put in front of us? Now, someone must have the answer to that, from the CE to Andrew to Grant, because I don't accept the senior management group went back and went through the budgets, we all went fine, we accept them, we present them, and now I'm 50 million short in year 2. I just don't get it. Tell me what I'm missing.
I think we were working to a debt cap. So when you're working to a debt cap, it gets prioritised down. That's what's happened. And it first of all starts with the officers and then the GMs, me, We had the Frugal Five come in.
Agreed. That's what happened, but no, do you not see the irony that 2 months later we're getting told we're $50 million short of piping and it's a priority and an emergency?
I don't think anyone's saying it's a priority or an emergency. They're saying, here is our risk. Now, there's a different way of looking at it. We have a risk profile, and we've got a lot of old pipes out there, so it is risky. That's what I'm hearing. And we need to start planning, how do we plan our way out of that?
The pipes, not saying that they're all going to fail tomorrow. We're not going to fail probably in the next year, maybe, but, you've got time. This is it. It is literally, these are the risks. We did present our asset management plans to the council. We had the workshops, the little booth sessions and that, and this information was there and it was presented.
So the risk is, in going through, that we end up in a position where it all comes due, say, in 10, 12 years' time, and we physically can't resource up to get on top of it.
Yeah, and that's the point. It's an opportunity, and it ties to the structure that we're going to be discussing, ties to delivery of the water service delivery plan and all those things. So we just need to give it some real focus around what's the solution. So bring on the data.
So what it's pointing to is water's going to have to generate more revenue.
Yeah.
Because when you start looking at water over the next 10 years, we're well into the 400% of our debt to revenue ratio. So you're getting right up there. So effectively, the solution's going to have to be what is the real cost of water and how do you get that paid for?
I guess, though, Alan pointed out what he paid in the Gold Coast or somewhere on his factory, and Andrew said, no, we're fine, we're charging what we can. So
But yeah, I agree. There's an opportunity in the commercial side of it as well.
So if you look on this, and I'll admit it's 2 years out of date to go through because Tomato Arroway don't report on this, but yet to go through, and it'll probably be the Commerce Commission going forward. We're right down the bottom, if this is going to work. We're in here to go through. If we were looking through, I had a look online, if you had a lifestyle block in Clutha or Central Otago, you would be paying somewhere between $3,500 to $3,800 for a restricted flow to your tank. Here, we're down around $1,000 to $1,500 to go through. So we're just, the other one we're not doing is connection charges for new connections and filling to go through. So we have financial contributions for where there's a upgrade of the network required, but we're not building in all the others. So you get infilling Timaru South.
Oh no,
we're not getting.
Governance is behind that. Let's change the policy tomorrow and we'll start charging. We agree. Just get us the information in front of us so we can sign it off.
Comes into that rating and revenue.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So just those connection charges, we do have them for Downlands and Tijuana, and they're sort of like $15,000 connection, so to recover that.
I mean, part of our issue here is that probably our neighbours are less than us, and so everyone makes those comparisons. Have you done that Waimate Mackenzie numbers yet?
When we looked through, it's
no, they're not.
They,
It's provincial, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's the National Performance Review, which was voluntary, so not everyone did it.
Yeah. So they haven't put through, and it's also the difference in their schemes to go through, and having not harmonising the costs has quite a big impact as well.
I mean, this is the conversation we're having at LTP around all these things, that we've been under charging rates for, and it's the same with water and everything. So it's just the conversation we need to continue to have. And so let's work through a solution. It's user pays. If you want water delivered, you have to pay the appropriate amount to renew it. And one of the guys at conference actually was talking on infrastructure, summed it up really well. The last 20 years, there hasn't been a lot of investment because there hasn't needed to be. It's now that a lot of the peak the life is, is running out. So this is the moment in time to find a solution. So we can't blame anyone from the last 20 years, because a lot of the work what wasn't needed. It would have been great if they could have put some money aside to help pay for it now, but they didn't, so it is what it is. Yeah.
For years, we've been living on the capacity of the past, and it's right across all the assets. It's not just water.
And so I think this is the other one. We've got Claremont coming up to go through. One that isn't taken into account there is Taste and Odour.
Taste and odour.
If we actually need to start doing the Taste and Odour, because we had the recent event in Downlands to go through. Historically, when Timaru had Taste and Odour, at the exact same time, pretty much the ozone went in, which blasts Taste and Odour away, and the covers went on the reservoir. So will the covers still be enough to go through? We don't know yet, so we're collecting that data. And the other one is the wastewater treatment plant. So we've got, and it's out into, is it late 2030s, about 70 million. If we look at what new treatment, wastewater renewed treatment plants, upgrades to meet the new standards, we're probably looking closer to 200 million, to be honest. And we've also, while central government said they're going to set a national standard for wastewater discharge, that's not going to be any easier than what the regional council is. And so it's only for municipal. So Frontier, etc., they don't have to meet that standard. We'll have to meet the standard.
Some of this will play out in the political theatre as far as what the country can and can't. So I agree that you should highlight the risk, but no one can afford that, so it's not going to be.
There's nothing wrong with discharging straight to sea.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Except if we want to measure carbon
Yeah.
of ocean discharge, as Reece highlighted with us this morning.
I mean, yeah.
We just go back a couple of slides, and my favourite old chestnut, the rural stockwater schemes. When
Charging.
Well, not only that, like when Ashburton District Council did their long-term plan, that was one of their major things they consulted on, was closing those schemes down. When was the last time we went and asked the scheme users if they still use them and whether they should be shut down, rather than relying on scheme users to come to council and go, shut it down? Because I would think that, yes, there are still some people that use them, but I would think the majority of people potentially don't.
Sorry, you're talking about the stockwater
schemes only? Yeah, only stockwater schemes, yeah.
Yeah. So the Beautiful Valley is a very small scheme, and we have in plan a review with each of those landowners, because although it's stock, in fact, we understand that it is used for drinking water, in which case, if it is used for drinking water, then there's all sorts of issues in relation to the quality and the lack of treatment, because at the moment there's none. So we'll be doing over this year, and there's potentially some funding for the following year for us to do something about that, which ultimately either could get rid of it, or it might provide them with rain tanks or something and then get rid of it, or there's some options there. The RO is significantly linked with the Rangitata irrigation, and there was a lot of work that was done with the previous chief executive in terms of the legal requirements and which didn't really end up with a resolution, and so it's just carried on. We haven't gone back to ask those consumers for probably 10 or so years, so it was around about the time of sort of Rangitata South. Sorry? Yeah, quite a few. I mean, it's a big area. So we haven't, and at the time that we did do the previous surveys, there was a willingness to keep it going. We haven't done it for number of years, but get rid of it.
But more on
Do
that
it.
one is we have had discussions with Rangitata South Irrigation, and it's all to do with the consents, and the two are very much interlinked. So our stock water scheme, basically, they use the water loss from our scheme to cover their consent where they have no water loss. So there's very much intertwined.
It uses common races and
Common
all
races.
sorts of
They need us,
complications.
we need them. Yeah.
The Beautiful Valley scheme, though, some people were forced onto that scheme due to the river becoming contaminated by Pearl Dam, so, wasn't it? I mean, I know people
No.
out of Beautiful Valley that were forced onto the stock water scheme because they could no longer take water out of the Kākahu River because it was too contaminated. And I could take you to those people and they could tell you all about it.
So, how long ago was that?
Oh, I've been talking to those people for a long time.
I mean,
Some of those people were forced onto that scheme.
there haven't been any new people on that scheme for 20 years,
Yeah, well, how
over
long's
20
that been?
years.
Eh?
Or out.
Yeah, there haven't been any new consumers on that scheme for well over 20 years,
But some of those people using the Kākahu River for stock water as well?
not that I know of.
Well, that's not what I've been told, but anyway, we want...
So going from here to our water delivery plan and our new entity, it's going to be an interesting challenge, and I'm assuming it's going to end up going over warts and all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Couldn't agree more.
And I think the interesting one will be what's in Bill 3. When that comes out, we should see first draft around December, because that's got all the standards in it.
Even so, it's still going to have to go, we have to make some decisions on what are we doing with it, and it'll be warts and all.
And whether or not, if it's a joint water services delivery plan, what that looks like.
Yeah, because I've had some discussions with our neighbours, Waitaki, Ashburton, Waitaki, Mackenzie and Waimate. They're all in the same situation. In fact, they're some ways worse. Mackenzie's facing a new treatment plant at Tekapo at $40 million. Yeah, it's a huge hit.
Yeah. It's definitely a national thing. I can say previous life, we had, in Auckland, we only replaced proactive replacement of sewer mains 5 kilometres in 3 years because there was no money, which had a massive flow-on effect just from the 3 years of doing that.
I have to say, Roading's the same. Basically they're only replacing 2% of the assets a year. So they're expecting roads to last 100 years or more, 200 years. And they're designed for a 25-year design life.
But we're not the worst in the country. Like our water assets and our roading assets are pretty good.
At the moment?
Yeah. And I think it shows it's where the whole country's facing this down. Yeah.
It's internationally, to be honest. America's facing the same issues.
Some of you guys have been here for, no, this is with respect, some time. Are these conversations that have been had for the last 20 years, renewals, etc.?
Yeah.
It comes down to affordability at the end of the day. What can the community
It
afford?
doesn't.
And that's the balancing act we've got to
But
do.
that's the problem with the argument when we had 1% rate increases between 2001 and 2006. I mean, they did it because it was affordable. That's got us into the cluster of a mess that we are now. The country's in that same mess because of that.
I actually think there's a great opportunity here.
Oh, of course
Because the way I see it is we We revalued our water assets, what, last year?
Yep.
When was the last time before that?
Sorry, revalued?
Hmm.
2 years, because...
Yeah, or 2 years, and then before that,
Before that, 3 years.
3 years.
Well, yeah, yes. And prior to that,
It was 2005.
Right.
Which is,
That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
So if you keep that regime of revaluing up, you can keep your revenue up.
yeah,
yeah, we didn't, I mean, so we rated for, based on some renewals, not on the depreciation, because because the book value was so low, for waters, we actually did our renewal profile and funded that as compared to just using the
Right.
depreciation, because the depreciation was so low.
But therein lies the problem, because when you revalue, your book value should come right up to today's value.
Yeah, well, that's what it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So once you get that resolved, that's part of the jigsaw puzzle sorted to get your pricing right. And then there's all those other pricing things you've talked about. We've just got to start attacking it.
I'll bring you back to where I started, which was those 2 quotes from the International Infrastructure Management Manual. Over the last 2 to 3 decades, there's a growing concern about the financial sustainability of the 3 water networks. Short-term decisions about investment, maintenance and renewals that are not sustainable over the long term.
Can you imagine the conversations that were happening in the 1950s when they put all the infrastructure in?
I think the thing about that was that there was significant growth associated with it. There was a continuing increase in terms of the number of ratepayers. Here we've got the storm of a reducing funding base, low affordability, ageing infrastructure. We have that perfect storm as compared to the 50s when it wasn't like that.
Right.
We also had central government funding a lot of stuff at that time. So
And also doing a lot of the work as well. Ministry of Works was flitting all over the country, not just doing central government projects like hydro dams and that sort of thing. They were also going in and putting in reticulation and
But,
reservoirs and all that.
But the point is, it doesn't matter who paid for it, the same work had to be done. So we've got to do the same work, but it's falling on the ratepayers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
whereas before, and going back to those, there was taxpayer dollars going into it as well. Yep.
Yeah.
The problem that we've got is, and there's an email from Leanne around complaints on rates coming through already, which is, going to come through in force, I would expect, over the next few weeks. That we've just had a conversation around this, and lots of people in the community have missed the real reasons on the increase. So I think there's an opportunity to do, more work in telling that story on exactly why. I did laugh the fact that someone's emailed through and complained and it was a plumber. But obviously doesn't know the challenges that sit within the three waters. So we need to tell our story better. Because, I went and spoke with a group last week, all retirees, 30 or 40 people in the room. I said, who was involved and read our long-term plan? No one. Only thing they wanted to talk about was the theatre. So, yeah, won't be doing anything. Yeah, but it's an opportunity. Data's good, and let's go tell the story. Yeah, because the reality is, whoever's sitting around this governance table, you're going to have to keep these water rates high to be able to do the work that needs to be done, or increase them, should I say. Well, they're not even high, that's the reality, they're low. That's half our problem.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
And when everyone talks about percentage changes compared to absolute, that's where it gets scary. But if you actually start talking about what's happening
Oh, it's a
around
dollar
the rest of
value.
the country.
Yeah. Our $400 was still less than, Auckland's 7% or whatever they ended up putting up, so.
I think part of actually getting that message out is our infrastructure standing committee needs to start more or less pretending or acting like they're the board of our new CCO or whatever we do with it, and bring, because how I feel as a relatively new CE is these guys do amazing work, but it's actually invisible to a lot of us. And we've got to bring that visibility up. So as their problems are being shared with us very, very regularly in front of the community through the standing committees. And a lot of the decisions they're making should be coming through those standing committees so that we're all aware of it. That's my thinking.
Really, if you actually double down right back, if you actually look at the expansion of the population growth over the last 20 years being 1.2 million people, you can see why our energy, our water, our fuel and everything is suffering. Because at the end of the day, that's the real issue, population growth, and we just haven't kept up, have we, to be fair.
Yeah.
And if you watch some really good documentaries, and I got Nige to have a look at one, he might not have watched it yet, right at the end of that, when they talk all those things, it came down to the population growth, and we just haven't kept up.
And we've got the inflation on OPEX has been crazy to go through. So if you think of energy going up, chemicals in 2021 went up to 20-something%. The way outstrips CPI.
Yeah, we have very little discretion spend on operations.
Well, got to finish with a positive. What's a positive?
We'll share the presentation. Yeah, we'll put it on the hub.
Presentation. At the back of it, we've got a lot more stats if you want to going in more detail around each of the schemes, etc.
It's like a condensed version of the AMPS, really.
Yeah, it's about 20 megs, I think. So if you can...
But if you want more pictures of pipe failures and stuff like that, we can.
A positive.
It's all.
Pretty much.
Yes.
But yeah, if anyone comes up with any questions or wants to know more on something, happy to help in anything that can support you guys in some later decision making.
I think the opportunity, because we have to have some good conversations over the water service delivery plan, the reform, the new, whatever new structure might look like with the community as well. So this is the opportunity to tell them and educate them on the challenges in this space, because we need to, and we probably need a bit of a comms plan on how we attack that.
Yeah, I think we do need to share it more with the community, and I think you'll get good community support with this. This is core infrastructure. This is what, a lot of the comments are coming from.
It's funny when you look at how much people pay for internet or electricity. Sky, yeah. And no offence to colleagues in the electricity sector, but it's a lot easier than doing water and wastewater and stormwater. But, yeah.
Oh, thank you. That was invaluable. Yeah, appreciate that.
Thank you.